Welcome Internet to Psychologist Casual Review, and today we're going to be reviewing Thomas Odgen's book, Reclaiming Unlived Lives, Experiences in Psychoanalysis. So let me preface this by saying that I read the French version, but it was very well translated, so I didn't feel I missed out on anything really. And I also would like to thank my colleague that lent me the book for this review. Thank you very much for it. It's been a very good read and a very good time. So what I found so striking about this book is that this book is so diverse, so rich in terms of what it presents, because it presents a theoretical understanding, clinical insights with patients. It presents notes on how Thomas Odgen and his reviews on Notes and Memory of Bion and the Fair of Breakdown of Winnicott, about essays of Kafka and Borges, and interviews with people. So it's so diverse, like you're not gonna get bored at all in this book. This book is wonderful like that. It's just very different from chapter to chapter. And I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it proper justice, because you just have to read it. It's one of those books where the review is like an introduction to the book rather than what the book is fundamentally about. Because if there's one thing that's going to reunite all of those elements I've just stated, which are very different from one another, it's this idea that some experiences, mainly traumatic, are not necessarily dealt with the person. The person cannot integrate them to the psyche. They're kind of like an element that's just in of its own exerting its forces and its influences on the mind, but is not integrated to the mind. And it's going to create impacts within the lives of people, be it on attachments, on self-esteem, on so many things, a whole range of stuff. But for Ogden, and it becomes very interesting, it's not just about the insight of the analyst towards the patient, meaning that the patient isn't just coming to see the psychoanalysis to get insight within the unconscious mind. It's about how analyst and patient can connect to the analytical third, as he calls it, like a creation, a co-creation by patient and analyst. And that creation, that connection is there to relive what was once unexperienceable, that wasn't integratable, that thing that could not be integrated is going to be relived not just by the patient but by the therapist as well. Both of them are going to relive the experience in an emotional and true way. It can be reintegrated without risking to destroy the patient. And that's a very, very wonderful idea. And to back his idea, he's going to talk about Winnicott and the Fair of Breakdown. And to say that he's going to go, I think, a bit further than Winnicott by saying that basically everyone can have fairs of breakdown. It's not just a psychotic anxiety, but it's really everyone can have points of their personality that were not integrated. And the whole job of the analysis is to try and make it an integrated part of the personality, to not drive it away, but to rekindle it with the rest. In a way, it's a way of rehumanizing and restating what was done, what had happened. And for that, Ogden is going to give 3 versions of thought, which he feels are 3 types of them. He doesn't say that it's all there is to it. He says that there's a lot of different types of thinking, but those 3 ones are versions that have helped him. The first one is the magical thinking. For Ogden, this is the thought of all-powerfulness, that the inner world can completely outrule the external world or the world of relationships, that the inner world thinks something, believes something, and does not need the outside world. Everything is self-centered, and there's no external gratification, or even sometimes worse, that magic thinking is also that the outside world could be transformed by the inner world through, of course, psychotic episodes, but not just that, but it also can be more insidious than that. It can also be something where people disconnect from others or despise them or reject them openly because they feel that their magical world and that's the wrong way, but that's how I see it. It's a bit like if their inner world became tainted with magic, able to push everything aside, and that they became all-powerful. And he does quote Bion on this, that those people are condemned to all-powerfulness. And that is not an exact quote, because in French it's condamné à la toute-puissance, and toute-puissance is hard to translate, Mark, so there you go. But the idea is that they are condemned to being all-powerful, therefore there's no room for someone else. And if there is, it's persecuted, because the other one could destroy you because he's all-powerful. So that magic thinking for Ogden is one of the more early and massive ways of dealing with phenomena, and one of the hardest ways on the psyche, because it excludes others, it excludes genuine interactions. He says that when the person is able, what should happen is that there should be the thought of reverie. Reverie being the connection of two minds, to think about something together, to be able to imagine it together. Something that he feels as at the core of healing with, for example, traumatic events. That what was unthinkable for someone then becomes possible through reverie. It's not a rejection of the other. On the contrary, it's an acceptation, a welcomingness of both parties to each other, in an idea that grows and in a way contains what has happened. It's in a way as if what was shapeless in magic thinking or magical thinking becomes shaped in reverie. And he says that the last part is transformative thought. It's a thought that changes everything, that what is thinking becomes changed, transformed, as the title of the concept indicates. Transformed in a fundamental way that the person can then take action, that his worldview, his ideas, his concepts change for the better, towards a more integrated, a more personal, and a more creative side. So all three of those thought processes are very interesting. I find them very relevant in psychoanalysis. And of course he does give examples, clinical examples of what he's talking about. So the reader is never lost within those concepts. On the contrary, he's, I feel, well guided into them. And it's all very interesting. And then he goes on with Winnicott's Fear of Breakdown, which he reads in a very interesting light, as it is not as coherent, constructed text, but something that's more nebulous. But that nebulousness does not prevent Winnicott from gaining true insight. It's not just about unconscious knowledge, it's about sharing a common understanding, as it's often the case in the videos I present, is that there's a common understanding between patient and therapist, but it's more than that. It's that the experience itself needs to be lived and relived, but in a case scenario where it can be accepted, where it's not going to destroy either party, contrary to what has happened, because that's at the core of Fear of Breakdown, is this idea that what has been experienced was not able to be contained, and therefore it has already been experienced, but the person is always afraid of it and always feeling that they might be destroyed by it or lose their humanity or their humanness. And that's the whole point of re-experiencing it together. It's showing that the patient is not alone, and to be able to show that that experience, as terrible, as terrifying, and as horrible as it is, can be shared within a relationship and sometimes even transformed within the relationship. It's the whole point of reverie. And then we get to the transformative process where the person changes both mentally and psychically about those elements. And that's very important, very interesting. The second article he reviews is Notes on Memories and Desires by Bion, which I reviewed previously. And very interesting again, because for Ogden, psychoanalysis, and that's one of his core elements and concepts has to be constantly reinvented by the psychoanalysis to fit the patient. And he says things which are so interesting, like every single case of psychoanalysis has to be unique. It is unique by de facto. That if it's the same, then it's not working, it's not right, it's not good. The analyst with the patient should be different with every single patient, but not different like in an extreme way, but ever so subtly different. Like something that's so subtle, like a grain of salt, but still fundamentally different, that the analyst should adapt to the patient. And what I found very interesting is that at the end of the book, he does tell us that the psychoanalysis does have a responsibility to the patient, not to psychoanalysis itself, not to the fairies, but to the patient. We owe the patient to try our utmost to create an environment, to create a thought process, a connection that will allow him or her to develop. And I fundamentally agree with him that it's our duty as therapists to try our utmost, to not just stay in dogmatic thoughts and processes, but to try and reach out, try and do something more with them, rather than just being one of the mill. And it's also something that's very interesting, because on that idea, he does say that the therapist has to change with the patient. That's something I innately always felt also, that if you're going to stay the same, the patient is going to stay the same. That you're not changing, you have to change with them. In a way, you have to show them it's possible because you're changing with them. And that's what I got out of this book, is that yes, changing is good, and changing as a therapist is fundamentally important. And as you experience your life, you're changing, and sometimes it can even help the patient when you go through things, like for example the death of a parent. You do have a representation, you do understand the ins and outs of it, and that can be a fundamental help in therapy, even if you're not going to say, of course, oh, I've lost my father yesterday, or I've lost my mother yesterday. No, you're not going to necessarily say it, and you not necessarily should say it, but what I'm trying to get to is that you have a representation, you have an idea of what it is, and that idea can then help the patient. Because that's also a big part of Ogden, is that as a therapist, you have idiosyncratic ways of reacting, meaning things that are completely your own and your very subjective experience with the patient. And he says that there's nothing like that. That it's not about generalizing or making grand rules. It's about every single point, every single moment is different, unique, and needs to be seized. It's a bit what I thought about reading the book. It's a bit like a dream. Every single dream is unique, even if you dream about the same sins or the same symbols or whatnot or what have you. It's so ever unique to the person who's dreaming it. You can't copy and paste two experiences, and it's the same. Even if on the surface they might seem exactly similar, they're very different at their core, and that's what he's on about, and I fully fundamentally agree with him. In a way, this book is very, very interesting, because you're never bored because of the richness of it, and yet you do get that profound feeling that psychoanalysis has to be unique. It has virtually a duty for Ogden to be unique, and that I fundamentally agree on. And that uniqueness is what is going to allow the patient to connect and to create something with the therapist. That it's both together that they're going to be able to open up to the future. And there's always that very, very interesting, because Ogden has all a literary side of it. So he reviews Kafka's work, and he gives a short biography of Kafka and Borges. I really hope you say it like that, I'm not sure. But both of them are very interesting, because they do show both, in a way, how sins can be unlived, and that how human connection can both be fed and appreciated. Mainly in Kafka's work, L'artiste de la faim, which would be translated into English as The Artist of Hunger, and how at the end, spoiler alert, he dies but rejecting the human world, and how this prevents a connection. Even though the connection was there, it is implicitly destroyed at the end of the short story. And that is something where Ogden gives a whole interpretation of how, in a way, something was there, something of good was there, but it could not be maintained. And sometimes that's what happens with patients, is that there is something good, but it's so unexpected, so change-worthy that it's frightening. And it's our role as a therapist to let the patient be able to explore that unexpectedness, that frightening element, without being completely overwhelmed mentally and emotionally. He also very interestingly says that that psychoanalysis isn't just about the patient healing, and it's not just his responsibility. It's also the responsibility of the therapist to create the elements that will help to heal. And all in all, this book I felt was fundamentally interesting. And it was so diverse that, in a way, I have the feeling that I've read many books within inside of one book, and that's always good. And I've always liked how Ogden presents his ideas not as truths, but as a way of seeing things, and that he's open to other people using his ideas and transforming them as well. How, in the same way he transformed certain ideas of Winnicott, Fernburn, and so on and so forth, because that's what he feels should be done, is that things should be transformed. Of course, it's not to say that ideas should be stolen. No, on the contrary, you have to respect the lineage, but you have to use them ever so slightly different, or use them in a new way than what authors prior to you have used them. Because that's how the whole of psychoanalysis works, I think, is that you use the concepts in a new way, in a way that's completely unique to yourself, but also to your time and your period. And that's something I feel is so very true, but not really talked about when you're trained. Because when you're trained, you have to learn the rules, and you have to learn the concepts to the even in the fine print. But here he's saying we can just leave the fine print and dream about the concepts, co-create the concepts with the authors. And I found that wonderful. It's so opening. It's so wonderfully welcoming, contrary to sometimes the institutions that can be much more rigid and focused on the good and the right thing to do. So on the whole, this was a beautiful book, and I fairly recommend it. And especially if you liked reverie and interpretation, it's more of the same, but perhaps this is a more diverse book than it was. So I hope you liked the review, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.